What I have found in the files may change the entire world's perspective about the death of Aaron Swartz. Now, some of you may already recognize who Aaron Swartz is, but if you're like me, I had no idea who he was until I found his name in the files. So Aaron Swartz is most famously known as one of the co-founders of Reddit, as well as what they call a hacktivist. And in 2013, he unalived himself just 3 months before his federal trial was set to start. The official story in the media is that in September of 2010, Aaron broke into MIT's closet twice, bypassed the MIT server walls, and downloaded millions of documents that were academic journals stored through a program called JSTOR, which is a subscription-based program that is only available through academic research lab like students, etc. And since he was a research fellow at Harvard, he had a JSTOR himself. Now, on January 6, 2011, Aaron was arrested by the MIT police, and he was arrested on breaking and entering charges, even though he just walked into an open closet, as you saw. But the MIT police force was not the only ones that showed up for his arrest, because they were accompanied by a Secret Service agent. In July of 2011, he was indicted by a grand jury on charges of wire fraud, computer fraud, and unlawfully obtaining information from a protected computer and recklessly damaging a protected computer. The official story is that the government went on this fervent campaign to try and make an example out of him, and he was facing up to $1 million in fines as well as 35 years in prison. And the pressure of the case was just getting to him, and he was running out of money. And so when his girlfriend came home from work one day, she found that he had... Here's my thing with this case. A whole bunch of charges ended up being dropped, including the state cases of breaking and entering, etc. He also returned all of the academic journals that he had taken, and the federal prosecutors gave him an offer of 6 months. His law team turned that down and had a counteroffer that did not include jail time, and the government turned down that offer. 2 days later, he unalived himself. So that makes zero sense to me. So then I started looking harder at the court documents involved in his case. Now, so the way my heart dropped out of my butt when I saw who his original lawyer was. Marty effing Weinberg, Epstein's lawyer of 20 effing years. So immediately I run to the files to see if anything was in there about Aaron Swartz, and there was only one thing of importance. This email to Giuffre from Joy Ito 8 months after the death of Aaron with the subject line, and then there was this recently, ... Link. It says, Jewish hero Aaron Swartz exposing elite. Excuse me? Now, Joy Ito was an entrepreneur and venture capitalist who actually took over as director of the MIT Media Lab in 2011. He was announced in April of 2011, just months after Aaron was arrested. People called the appointment an unusual choice because this man has no degrees. Joy Ito is in the files a hell of a lot. Like, I put him in the top 10, top 20 people that Giuffre talked to. And whatever their conversations were about, even Ito was like, do you have Signal? Let's talk on there. And that was in 2017, long before I heard of Signal. Now, when I tried to put that link in the Wayback Machine, I got a message that I've never seen before, saying that the URL has been excluded from the Wayback Machine. Now, it took me a good long while, but I was able to find it. And are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? January 16th, 2013, so 5 days after Aaron was found dead in his Brooklyn apartment, this blog posted, Jewish hero Aaron Swartz exposing elite child abuse. This blog references an op-ed written by the former editor of Japan Times Weekly titled, Was Aaron Swartz unalived by a Massachusetts Institute of Technology satanic child ring? Yeah, folks. Now, here's the article. They tried to scrub that too, but I found it. It's really long and it goes into a lot more detail, but basically this person spent about 2 years working with a anti-trafficking ring, and it claims that Swartz was a risk to the people at MIT who produced child for a clientele that includes the highest echelon of the State Department, major corporations, intelligence agencies, the military brass, and the White House. I have taken the last few days to research every single part of these claims. They also named Nicholas Negroponte, who was the person who founded Media Labs at MIT. They also talk about Frank Moss, who was the person who was running the lab when Aaron did his thing, as well as claiming that Joy Ito ran a nightclub in Tokyo's district, which was run by a Yakuza boss, connecting it back to MK Ultra, claiming they were using it on children to make slaves for the elite. And trust me, I've gone deep into this. I've found articles that have been scrubbed from the internet. I've connected it back to the State Department, the Secret Service agent that we've talked about. I've even dug into the background of his girlfriend and found out that she has a very suspicious familial connection. At his own funeral, his father got up there and said that Aaron was killed by the government, which has been spun to be metaphorical. Also, if you want to support my work, go to my bio. My dog's medicine is about to run out and I'm starting to run low on funds. I've read about 700 documents related to Aaron's case, and I can tell you confidently that what the media was being told about this case was not what was actually happening. Not only that, I truly believe that Aaron was going to get off. First off, Aaron went and downloaded these files from MIT several times. Y'all will have to forgive me if I get something techie wrong because it's not really where my brain goes. But from what I can tell, twice in all of these time periods, he actually hacked into MIT's computers, not just where the journals are stored. Because the question people don't seem to ask themselves is, why did Aaron go to MIT specifically to do this? He was a research fellow at Harvard with a JSTOR account. If all he possessed was 4 million journal articles, why did he need to go there to do it? Which was one of the points brought up in this article. And again, I don't know tech, so let me know if this is wrong in any way, but according to this, the steel rack stacked with routers and at least one server into which he had plugged the laptop in for download, which required an extraordinary amount of time, indicating that the content was high quality video and not documents. Because Aaron specifically had to go into that closet, it said that the targeted server could only be accessed via a dedicated line and not with a hack. A dedicated line indicates the transfer of illegal content to strong encryption. Both of the cases for Jonathan James was handled by Stephen Heyman. I think they were intentionally trying to drive him to unalive himself. I think it started out with surveillance and harassment. Get this, Robert, Aaron's father, was very, very involved in the legal process, very smart, and was very hands-on with the lawyers. That is until the beginning of 2012, when Aaron's mother went into a routine operation and was put in a coma. So for half of the year, he had to step back and take care of his mother, which is why the timing feels really suspicious here for the federal prosecutors to add 9 superseding indictments. Because by March of 2012, all of the state charges had been dropped. They claim it was because they didn't want to impede the federal prosecution. However, a later report submitted to the president of MIT said that the Massachusetts state law required the district attorney to dismiss the charges after the Boston U.S. Attorney's Office and the Secret Service failed to hand over evidence to Swartz's attorneys. Brings us back full circle to the blog about the child PDF file ring. The first person we need to talk about in this blog is Nicholas Negroponte, who was literally the guy who started MIT's Media Lab. The writer basically accuses the one laptop per child initiative that Nicholas started was just a giant front for state-funded 3-lettered child, an initiative that helped receive funding from the government thanks to his brother, John Negroponte, who was Deputy Secretary of State from 2007 to 2009 and the first ever Director of National Intelligence. Prior to that, he was the ambassador to Iraq, ambassador to the Philippines, ambassador to Mexico, the Deputy National Security Advisor, and was in a fraternity with one of the Bush brothers. But then in 2007, he stepped down as the Director of National Intelligence and served as Deputy Secretary of State under Condoleezza Rice, acting as Chief Operating Officer in the State Department and overseeing the formulation and conduct of U.S. foreign policy. Now, actually, there's a lot of emails between the two of them. It seems like Nicholas was showing him around the lab personally. Y'all were getting lunch together. Though it's funny because it seems like these introductions were not made until after Aaron Swartz's death. And I feel like when these men say the word philanthropy, it's a code word. I mean, Jeffrey was literally sending planes to go pick this guy up. Now, the journalist who wrote the article that this blog is referencing from 2003 to 2009 worked on and off again in Cambodia with an international team of anti-PDF file activists. The Cambodia team was following up a lead of material taken by the Newsweek Tokyo bureau chief Bernard Krischer, who's on display at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Hong Kong, a den of connected with the Jimmy Savile case. There is an FBI tip in the files where someone said they saw Glenn Dubin, Leon Black were at this party together with this man Goobler, who was drinking red human fluids out of a necklace around his neck, and the entertainment for that night was Jimmy Savile. Now, Bernard Krischer was actually a Far East representative of the MIT Media Lab and collaborated with Nicholas Negroponte as one of the first to sponsor a school in Cambodia in Krischer's signature school building project. As it turns out, they also partnered with an orphanage in Cambodia called Future Light Orphanage, which housed 300 orphans. And there's a lot of literature linking orphanages in Cambodia and the prominent SA of children who were housed there. Now, the writer of this article references the Cambodian police shutting down an orphanage's satellite link tower, which was being used to upload child porn videos, and the teachers at that Cambodian orphanage told the writer of this article that the computers and satellite communication systems were installed and maintained by Nicholas Negroponte, also claiming that he was a frequent visitor at one of the orphanage's sponsors who arranged the weekend pajama parties in the city whenever foreign VIPs arrived. Now, I was able to find this text chain on Christmas Day 2016 with someone we can't see, where they write to Giuffre, "We are in Cambodia. Hope you can teach them some good stuff." Mind you, the conversation started with "Merry Christmas to you and your family," to the number 2, a picture, then 2 more pictures, then the original sender says Giuffre style, to which Giuffre replies, "Who are the girls and where? We can consider next semester at Berkeley, but you have working harder at delivering assistance. Blank will deliver you assistance in New York first week of January. We are in Germany with him now celebrating Christmas, birthday, and selecting assistance for you from his New York network, Winky Face." Then they talk about getting a special toy from my friends for Christmas. Did you have fun? Thanks for massage. This article also mentions the former British governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten, as now widely suspected as a high-level protector of the BBC and his old boy circle. And oh boy, when I searched up Chris Patten's name in the files, I hit some pay dirt. Most notably being this email from 2004 from Ghislaine Maxwell's mother, talking about how her sister Isabel attended the boat race in Chris Patten's boat. Well, that's pretty damning. And let's not forget that Isabel was married to Al Seckel, who was helping Giuffre scrub the internet and then mysteriously went missing, only to be declared a self-unaliving 7 years later. Patten shows up quite a bit, but in this one conversation, Steve Bannon asks Giuffre if patent flipping is meaningful, and Giuffre responds with, "They all connected to Tom Barrack." And as we all know, Tom Barrack is all over these files. Now, in the article in its original form, and not just the blurbs we saw on the blog, they talk about how Krischer and his staff of the Cambodia Daily were hostile to their presence, the anti-trafficking organization they were part of. Now, apparently Krischer, under the guise of providing food relief in North Korea, he was actually visiting orphanages to select for children for overseas education. And at the same time, the Boys Town in Nebraska started having Chinese orphans show up. This group was trying to be boots on the ground, more proactive in fighting these brothels, like supplying equipment for nighttime stakeout. And at one point, when 2 of their team members tried to approach the orphanage that Krishner helped, they were blocked by Cambodian policemen wielding submachine guns. But in 2017, the Cambodia Daily's print publication was actually shut down by the Cambodian government in 2017, but relaunched its operations offshore as an online-only news service publication the following month. That's a hell of a quick turnaround. Interesting that they moved their operations to international water. A month after Joy Ito sent that blog to Jeffrey Epstein, he messages somebody who's blacked out, asking Thanksgiving, Christmas plans, and that person invites him to Cambodia for Thanksgiving. And just to wrap it all up, a month after that Thanksgiving Cambodia invite, Jean-Luc Brunel reaches out to Jeffrey, talking about how Ofer is with me and my friend Andre. Victor Hugo landed today from Brazil without a visa. We are going to Cambodia. Is anything that I can do to convince you for Tokyo? My guess is that he was referencing Andre Dunstetter, seen here in an email literally from the same day Joy Ito sent that blog to Jeffrey, helping him find a new governess to replace Maxwell. And considering Victor Hugo was the guy who wrote Hunchback of Notre Dame and Les Miserables, I'm gonna guess that's somebody's code name. And even though this person was coming from Brazil without a visa, they're going to Cambodia for some reason. Sounds pretty shady, especially when you find out that the family is a star billionaire shipping magnate family. And patriarch Sammy used to be considered the richest man in Star. He died in 2011, so clearly that's not him being talked about in that email. Meaning it's either his son Isle, who was an intelligence officer at one point in the Air Force, but I think the most likely culprit is Iden. Also because until 2023, he was on the executive board of Harvard Kennedy School. And I can't help but wonder if that's who's being hidden in these messages, talking about partying with the Princess of Cambodia in FemFon. an activity that he called yummy. And no, we're not done going over this blog. We're not done going over my research, but I think it's pretty evident at this point that this blog has a lot of truth to it. And that's why it worried Joy Ito enough to send to Giuffre.